Well, it's hard to say, but we know the past. We know the pattern. I mean, they tried to remove President Trump from office before he even got there. Now they're trying to remove him after he's already left. And frankly, guys, it doesn't matter how much video they show, how many hours they stand up there and talk. There are four principles that aren't going to change. I mean, this is unconstitutional. I mean, impeachment says the requirement for impeachment is removal from office. How do you meet that requirement when someone's not in office? So the Constitution problems are big. The due process, lack of due process, it was a 2-hour impeachment process in the entire House. This process makes Adam Schiff a year ago look like he actually had due process. It was actually fair, and we know that wasn't. So unconstitutional, no due process. The attack on the First Amendment, as Mr. Dershowitz was pointing out, is really serious. And this, I think, should scare every American. And then finally, the fourth principle is, how does this unify the country? I mean, Joe Biden said in his inaugural address some good things in that speech about unifying the country, but this certainly doesn't move the nation in that direction. So I think those four principles are never going to change. Who knows what they're going to do after this? We just know how ridiculous this is. And I think, again, the American people see it for what it is, see through this, and understand that the president should be acquitted.
Well, let's dive into the House manager's argument here. Representative Jamie Raskin mentioned the fight like hell remarks President Trump made on January 6th during his argument yesterday. But a little searching on Twitter finds his own tweets with sort of the same call to action. In fact, word for word, fight like hell. Democrats argue that Trump's statements are different because, of course, as president, he's the most powerful man in the free world, and also that those words help to incite violence. What do you make of this argument and the differences between the two politicians here?
No, this is the double standard that Americans hate. Democrats are allowed to say fight like hell. Republicans aren't. Democrats are allowed to say elections were stolen. Republicans aren't. Democrats are allowed to object to 10 states on January 6, 2017, including Mr. Raskin, but Republicans aren't allowed to object to 6 states on January 6, 2021. Democrats are allowed to walk around the metal detector, as Ms. Pelosi did last week. Republicans have to walk through it. Democrats are allowed to say we need more unrest in the streets last summer, when in fact there was unrest in the streets. But President Trump gets impeached for telling people at the rally to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. This, more than anything else, this double standard is what Americans hate. And the Democrats, they want to have it both ways. They want to be able to say whatever they want, exercise their First Amendment liberties. But, Republicans can't do that. We're going to impeach the president of the United States after he's left office for things that they said that I think are much closer to the incitement standard that the Supreme Court set in the Brandenburg case than anything the president said in his January 6th speech.
Congressman, I want to ask you about something that you said earlier. You talked about due process and how this has lacked due process completely. And it brings me to a thought about what happened January 6th, where the investigation into what really happened with Capitol Hill Police, and there were people that just simply walked in at this time, wasn't well protected. We still don't know the exact circumstances behind Officer Sicknick's death, who passed away after sustaining an injury. That, again, still hasn't been ruled on here. When do you think we'll see this report, when, despite the impeachment proceedings, but what happened with Capitol Police and the continuing investigation into exactly what happened with Sicknick?
No, great questions, and we do need to get to the bottom of all this. There were those four principles. I also say there are 4 key facts that aren't going to change either. Remember, the FBI knew about the planned attack ahead of time. There were pipe bombs that were planted ahead of time. The Capitol Police asked the Sergeant of Arms, asked for additional help, asked for the National Guard to be present beforehand. And, of course, the president said peacefully and patriotically, make your voices heard. So those 4 facts cut against everything the Democrats said. We'd like some answers to what the FBI knew, when they knew it, how they got that information, what all was involved. We'd like information on why, when the Capitol Hill Police asked for National Guard to be present, why that was denied. Seems to me we should have had the same posture that the Capitol has when the president comes every year for the State of the Union address. This was a big event, January 6th, and we're going to count the electoral votes. So it seems to me we should have had that kind of posture, that kind of security presence around the Capitol. And obviously there wasn't, in spite of the warnings that it appears the FBI had and the Capitol Hill Police were aware of as well.
Yeah, security was not there, not prepared, clearly. They have now sort of stationed in Washington, D.C., which, of course, looks much different than it has, earlier in the year. I want to talk to you, though, about also a comment made last night on Greg Kelly Reports. Congressman Gaetz told Greg that Republicans are not fighting back as hard as they should be right now. And so I'll ask you, Congressman, if potentially Republicans take control of the House in 2022, which I know the GOP is hoping they will, should they try to impeach Joe Biden or another Democrat president based on the precedent that's been set with this trial?
Frankly, I think our number one issue should be trying to stop the cancel culture and the attack on the First Amendment. I mean, this is really what's going on in this impeachment. They want to cancel the guy who had 74 million Americans vote for him. They don't want him on the ballot anymore. This cancel culture and the attack on Americans' First Amendment free speech rights is frightening. And I said this on the House floor during the impeachment debate a couple weeks ago. I said to the Democrats, don't think it will just be Republicans who get attacked. The cancel culture will come for Democrats, too. And guess what happened? 13 days later, the senator from California, Senator Feinstein, the San Francisco School Board said the Dianne Feinstein Elementary School will no longer be named after Senator Feinstein. So even a liberal icon like the senator from California isn't woke enough for the cancel culture. That's where this leads, and it's a dangerous, dangerous place. I mean, Senator Feinstein got canceled for something she said 37 years ago, for goodness sake. So this is the number one threat. And this is where we have to fight back as conservatives, as Republicans, as Americans who respect the First Amendment, who respect the Bill of Rights, who respect the Constitution. That's our main focus. And if we do that, I do think in 2 years, Republicans will take back the House.
And Congressman, cancel culture, Americans, you bring me to this next topic of Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, wanting to stop the national anthem from happening, played at their games. He, in fact, did for one. NBA steps in and says, hey, no, you can't do that. You're going to have to play it. He kind of walks those back. But what were your thoughts on that? The national anthem almost getting canceled in Dallas.
So it's today's left. I mean, look, you had athletes who won't stand for the national anthem. Some of those athletes got USA written back across the back of their jersey. You'd have the owner of an NBA franchise saying the same thing. You got Joe Biden on the very first day doing an executive order to cancel the 1776 commission, a commission which talks about the wonderful principles that make America the greatest country ever, the dangers of communism, the dangers of fascism, the importance of the nuclear family, all just good, solid principles. And he cancels that. And then just last week, we had a motion offered by Congressman Gates in the Judiciary Committee that we Republicans supported, which said, why don't we do the Pledge of Allegiance before full Judiciary Committee hearings? After all, this is the committee that's supposed to protect the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, those things we were just talking about. Why not have us say the Pledge of Allegiance before important full committee hearings in front of the Judiciary Committee? And the Democrats said no. So this is just today's left. It's another thing we got to push back against, because if you don't have that focus on just what